Hey, Jen, thanks for taking the time. We really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Nice to have you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, it's great to have you. And, obviously we've been working together for a while. We really like what you're doing. Can you tell us a little bit about what Lattice is and what you're trying to do?
Well, Lattice is a data exchange company. We are actually focused on the private-public partnership version of what we're trying to do with municipalities, with regional transportation authorities, and some other of the government entities that are around that have issues with trying to pay for their digital infrastructure.
That's fantastic. That's a real, I listen to a Chicago accent too, so that's very nice.
Oh,
Hey,
yeah.
can you give us a bit of your background? Because, if I think about what you're trying to do with Lattice, I mean, it's a wide range. You're bringing a lot of different skills to the table. From my point of view, how did you get prepared to do something like this? I mean, it's a really fascinating but complex business you've got developing.
Well, as you mentioned, I do have a lovely Chicago accent, especially when I say Chicago. I started my career on commodity exchanges, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and I was a specialist on the Chicago Board of Options Exchange. And as I progressed in my career, I ended up working in risk management, moved into payment systems, and I worked for Visa. I had the pleasure of working for some of the largest banks in the world, integrating, very good solutions for big data to try to help combat fraud and other risk elements. So we kind of merged the two ideas together. And by the time we were done, we ended up with what we're sitting with. We're trying to come up with a solution that benefits all sides of the party to join in and actually help a marketplace. And that marketplace today is big data. Okay. So we basically brought alive the idea of data as a commodity. And we're now to the point in the marketplace where we believe that it's time to actually centralize some of that into some standardized way and format, which is very similar to the way the commodities exchange do today.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, the first time we met, I thought your insight into this business was super interesting and was going to go places. So congratulations. I know you guys have a couple of pilot projects. Obviously, we don't want to get into where those might be unless you want to talk about those. But what are you trying to do with those the pilots that you have?
Well, basically, the idea is to take this disparate bunch of data systems that collect data for, and in this area, I'll tell you, we are working in the transportation industry, and take, the information, because we're working with autonomous driving systems and things today that need to talk to each other. And the problem is not only are they disparate systems, but also there's a liability issue when one or the other party holds this data if they're going to mix it and enrich it. So what we want to do is come and create a platform where neither party has to take all this severe risk, because what they are is actually working on a separate system, similar to the payment systems. You have merchants and you have banks, but they don't actually run the system in between. Right. This way we take the economic burden off of those entities and then work together to try to form a coalition that can mutualize expenses and actually develop a big data industry much better. What's
the most challenging part of creating a whole new business and an entirely new business model in an entirely new market that it doesn't even exist yet? What's the biggest?
The scary thing is I feel somewhat like I'm the Hubble telescope looking at things for the very first time, and everybody's coming along with us. But the good news is that I think the most interesting part of this is, and also the most difficult, is forming the coalition of these big public data partners, right? And then big coalition of private data folks. And I'm talking some of the biggest ones in the world can actually have an advantageous situation by actually, coming together and sharing data for enrichment purposes, for innovation and things like this. So it's a little bit of a storytelling. You have to kind of get people to understand the concept. But I think for the most part, the folks that are actually dealing already in commodities, such as like your energy companies, your financial companies, they completely grasp the concept.
Okay.
You know, they see that the marketplace is so big now, it needs a little standardization. And the best way they've done that in their own perspective industries was actually to create exchanges that could help everybody decide what policy should look like, what privacy should look like, what, you know, these contracts are actually worth. Because what the idea is, at the end of the day, we can create an open market system based on supply and demand.
No, it's really interesting, and you know, I know something about what you're doing, and the partners you put together from both the public and private side are the best companies in the world, right? So it's clearly a phenomenal idea because the people you're able to attract are phenomenal in terms of
Yeah.
people, in terms of companies. So congratulations again. Talk a little bit about the value of the data that you're going to capture. Because that's one of the things that I think is most interesting about this, the revenue that you're going to generate and be able to make available to the public sector for producing public goods, for reinvestment. Because one of the biggest issues that everybody talks about when they talk about smart cities is the only catch is cities don't have any money. And so, you know, you're actually going to produce the oil to make things run.
Well, I look at it like this. It's time that the citizens actually got some of that benefit back. You know, we have, you know, the horse is out of the barn, our data, our privacy, all these things that we keep, you know, so cherished. However, we have a phone that we give everything to every day, right?
Right.
So the issue isn't necessarily, you know, privacy, these things. What the issue is there's people who are making a lot of money on somebody else's information. Okay. Now, I believe in open data, but open data is an element of public good. So we're the people, this is our information, we're good with sharing it. There is an element, however, that, you know, this is not, open does not mean free. And so these municipalities, who every year are strapped for budgets, are begged to have new projects, and technology always needs to be improved. So this is a never ending game, right? So you actually have to create something that's a revenue generator, and something in perpetuity that'll be a revenue generator. So kind of like a towaway is, how can we get these digital lines? Is there some way we can create a platform that actually benefits all participants, but, you know, and they're willing to maybe pay a little bit, but it's cheaper than what they would be paying independently for what they're actually getting, which is exactly how commodity exchanges start and things like this. But in this idea, we do a public-private partnership. So the public is actually the owner, like all the other members of the exchange. They're, you know, some form of equity owner, or they receive a benefit. For instance, open platforms can be run centrally in a county for all the cities, so that they only have to pay into one entity versus every single, each one has to have networking, storage, security, and yada, yada, yada. That mutual, this way, you build it for yourselves, but also you create an open platform that other members, private companies can come, like private car companies, for instance, can come and use that same infrastructure. And it's a good argument. It's easier, it's better, there's more protection. We're looking at a clearinghouse model, things to take that counterparty risk away. So it's this idea where we can not only save the money, but have an interest to actually pay the money back. And I mean, by policy, pay it back. And therefore, the cities then will have an entity that's generating money that give them dividends so that they can pay for this digital infrastructure, which is the foundation of all infrastructure these days.
You know, what's interesting, I walk out of my building, and across the street is a fantastic building built by the Southern Railway Company. And then Union Station was built by the Southern Railway Company, or the Union Station here was actually built by the Southern Railway Company. In the old days, the people who made all the money created public goods because it made sense for them to create public goods. You almost see right now that people aren't doing that, and that sort of worm needs to turn. So I really like listening to what you're doing, because you're talking about taking commodity and not just generating wealth, but generating public wealth with it, which I think is really important.
I mean, what we're doing is creating something that's actually tradable. And it took expertise from our backgrounds from payment systems and commodities to come up with, you know, something in this element, which are called data attributes, that can be commoditized, grouped together in large masses to be moved very quickly among, you know, arterial digital infrastructure from one place to another. The idea is those places, similar to your train stations, are major hubs for information.
Yeah.
And then eventually one day we connect those hubs and all of a sudden we have a really good G2G system. We have an ability to bring in an element where people can actually monetize their data on an open and fair market platform that is not existing today. So yes, it's a new industry, but it's an industry that's a need, similar to, tulips in the Netherlands and, pigs and hogs in Chicago. Okay.
That's fantastic. Well, listen, this isn't going to be our last conversation on GVIP TV, but thanks so much. I really appreciate it and look forward to seeing you tomorrow as well. Thanks for participating and we'll see you soon. Thanks so much, Jen.
Thank you, Norman.